The Paris prosecutor's office has opened a terrorism investigation. Kamran Bokhari is a senior fellow with the program on extremism at George Washington University here in Washington, D.C. He joins me now in the studio to talk to us more about what happened. No claims of responsibility just yet, but what is your read on what happened there tonight?
Well, I mean, from the details of what we have so far, it doesn't seem like someone who was like deranged. I mean, this does look like a terrorist attack. In fact, I am convinced the individual had explosives, grenades, firearms, and I mean, this is not one of those sort of random, if you have someone who doesn't have the tradecraft, who's not trained for this, you could drive down, but you couldn't kill that many people. You could hit a few people and that's it. But this person was able to, engage in this level of slaughter. And so that requires training, that requires preparation. So clearly there is an organization. I mean, and one of the things that is obvious is that the French authorities do not have a handle in terms of intelligence on the various cells that exist in their country.
That has been a main complaint about the way the French intelligence is set up with various organizations. There are reports that the French Interior Minister had rejected some reform measures to overhaul the system. This has happened before. We've seen it time and time again. Here we are again now, this time Nice, France. What needs to happen?
Well, there is if indeed this is commissioned by ISIS, and this is not someone inspired on his own, which I find hard to believe given what he did, then clearly there is some sort of a machine that is behind all of this. There is sort of a mid-level management between ISIS in Syria, Iraq, and these people who perpetrate these attacks. There's a mid-level management here. There is a need to track that down, neutralize that mid-level management. Then, the cells get dispersed. Because until you hit them, then you're just taking out one cell at a time.
On the surface, France appeared like it was secure. They had just successfully hosted the Euro 2016 football tournament. They're hosting the Tour de France right now. They have been under a state of emergency, so there are holes in what's happening there.
So you can formally declare a state of emergency, and that's more of a statement, more of a declaration. The question is, what is being done to prevent follow-on attacks? And this was one of the concerns of the Bush administration after 9/11, that we don't know how many other people out there and cells that may do follow-on attacks. So there was a need to disrupt the network. Hence the air campaign in Afghanistan and everything else that followed from it. That disrupted the organization from the top, and we did not have follow-on attacks by Al-Qaeda. We know now, based on intelligence, that there were other operations in the works, but they were disrupted. You need something like that, a shake-up of the entire system of ISIS. The question is France willing to do that? And of course, France can't do it alone. There has to be a wider coalition.
Is there not enough communication among the agencies, or how is the information or the sort of what could happen, the warnings, how is that not getting across? I mean, they've put so many soldiers, officers on the street, but as you say, that is simply not enough. You cannot have enough people to guard every single place. So this is not a security issue. This is an intelligence problem. Not knowing how many cells are out there in the pipeline, plotting and planning and ready to execute. So unless we have that intelligence about the superstructure or the machine, as I say earlier, that we cannot hope to get ahead of this curve. We've seen just a few weeks ago the airport attack in Istanbul. Prior to that, the airport attack in Brussels. Is this, we've also reported about ISIL losing ground in Syria and Iraq, but yet we continue to see these mass attacks, whether or not, again, this is part of ISIL. What's going on there?
I'm skeptical about the extent to which the conventional wisdom thinks that ISIS is weakening. Why? Because we have these attacks. Yes, there's a loss of territory, but what does that really mean? There are places. Is it a retreat in after being defeated, or is this a strategic drawdown pullback, and then turning around and using resources elsewhere. I think it's the latter. I think that we have not seen ISIS lose critical territory, territory that is vital for their polity to exist. They have lost outlying areas so far.
Stay with me. I want to bring in our correspondent, Sean Calebs. He is in our newsroom. Sean, you wanted to jump into this conversation as well.
Yeah, to me, it's very fascinating. I'm just curious about the degree that social media helps these so-called lone wolves or people who may be contracted by Al-Qaeda, by ISIL, to do something like this, because we know the Tsarnaev brothers apparently had Inspire downloaded where they could have learned how to turn a pressure cooker into a bomb. And this article that I'm reading talks about the ultimate mowing machine, using a truck to hit a pedestrian area, saying the advantages, a method like this has never been used before. The same kind of thing before 9/11 when planes were steered into the World Trade Tower buildings in New York and Pentagon here.
What's your thought?
I think that there is an element of truth to that there is a lot of inspirational material. But we need to understand that inspiration alone does not result in this level of carnage. It requires a certain level of tradecraft that you can't pick up from a manual. This is not like you bought a microwave and say, you know, how do I work the microwave?
But some people would say he just jumped in a truck and just started driving down the street hitting people. Does that really require a lot of training?
So if you think about the mechanics of jumping into a truck and hitting people, I don't think that you can kill that level of people unless you knew where to hit, when to maximize the casualty. He had a gun, he used the gun, he had explosives and firearms. This is not random.
And he went quite a long way. I mean,
exactly.
At least a kilometer.
And it seems like the fact that he had weapons and explosives in his vehicle, it seems to me that he thought he'd survive this first attack.
And there would be more.
There would be more. So that's not the work of someone who just got inspired. So again, inspiration is necessary, but not sufficient. You need to have a certain minimum level of tradecraft. Yeah. Otherwise, you could fail in whatever plot you're planning.
Not trying to say that it was just the inspiration, because they can learn a great deal and they can make the kind of contacts that they need. In fact, these articles go to great length to say you have to be very wary of people approaching you, saying that they're for jihad. That if you don't know the people, don't bring them into the fold, so to speak. And we know that this driver apparently zigzagged, if you will, and accelerated as he hit large groups of people. Right now, people have to wonder, did he act alone? Could there have been somebody else within that truck, in the back? Could there have been other people who were going to launch attacks at the same time? To what degree do you think we're going to hear about that in the coming hours?
I think the fact that he had explosives in his vehicle, those are things that are not easily available from like a shop. You have to smuggle them in. You have to know who to get them from. Without being detected.
It's difficult to get a gun in France. I mean, it's not the U.S.
That's my point.
Yeah.
So if he had all of that, clearly he knew where to get that. Even if he was a lone wolf, which I have a hard time believing, it may be the truth. We don't know just yet. But even if that's the case, he knew exactly where to get the material to do the kind of damage that he did today.
Do you think there could be some other people involved that are on the run right now that were waiting possibly to carry out something larger after?
I think that the possibility of that is very high, and even greater possibility is that there are other cells that we don't know about that are not related to this cell. They don't even know this cell, and that are out there that are to be activated. Unless we take down the middle management that is running this horror show, we're not going to be able to